Daniel Scheufler, welcome to our second Leanpub Launch video.
We're here awesome. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, my pleasure. We're here today to talk about your latest book, 10 more Days to Become a Better Developer. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the origin of your 10 Days books, and then specifically why 10 more in this book.
Sure. So the origin for the 10 days concept came actually out of a set of 10-day challenges that were produced by EntreLeadership. They're a fantastic podcast, strongly recommend if you get the chance. And they were trying to produce something for the community to actively put into practice stuff they were talking about in the podcast. I thought that idea was cool, and talked with the podcast producers like, hey, can I get permission to go and run these? Like, sure, just don't use our stuff. I'm like, I can do that. And so the 10-day challenges were born. And I've used these several times at clients that I've been practicing with to help their developers practically start working on this self-improvement journey. And so the 10 days fits naturally into the Agile sprint. Assuming that you're aligned to a week, you've got about 10 days, 2 sets of 5 on average, to work this in. So I kind of built it off of what I felt the developer's natural cycle would be, with the hope that, hey, you could find 15 minutes to do this, to lower the barrier of entry.
And is this the kind of thing that the kind of exercises in these books are things people should do at the beginning of the day, sort of after their coffee?
That's generally been my experience, that that's the right time to settle into it. But I've had people who choose to do it in the afternoons because that's when they wake up. And so, find a spot that fits based upon your own rhythms. But for me, that's always in the morning before people come in. Usually I do mine before stand-up so that I get everything done out of the day. And I'm kind of firing on all cylinders by the time I get to stand-up, of excited for the day. Here's the new thing I learned, and off we go.
It's interesting. We've already used a bunch of terms that we're obviously very familiar with, like Agile and stand-up and stuff like that, and clients, for example. But so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the kind of work that you do and the kind of clients that you have.
Certainly. So I am a principal consultant with Improving. My job is to go to, say, an oil and gas company that's trying to now write software to distribute information about their orders around their, global facilities. And so I'll jump in and work with their team of developers, or maybe help them stand up a team of developers, to start iteratively building software in the Agile methodologies. Now, Agile is the name for the essentially iterative pattern, taking tiny little steps of each time, trying to deliver some new element of value so that continually we're making good returns on the investments they're putting into developing the tool. Now, this is usually done in about 2-week iterations. So, hey, let's go talk to the client. What do you guys need? Here's your plan. Okay, now we come back. We talk about designing it. We build it over 2 weeks. We test it. We release it. And then we go back and say, here's what we built for you. What do you think? What do you still need? So that we can cycle through these. And those, on average, are about 2 weeks long. But some groups have them longer. Some groups have them. I've only seen one do it shorter. And that was a really, really, really fast group. But they were also a lot more mature in the process. So
you mentioned the oil and gas industry, and I should point out that you're based in Houston, I believe.
That is correct. It's a very big market segment for us.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm just kind of curious what a lot of people would think about riggers or something like that when they're thinking about oil and gas, or people, on a sort of platform out on the sea. Mm-hmm. But when you mentioned orders, so what kind of software do oil and gas companies need?
Okay, so I've worked both on upstream, where we're dealing with sourcing and planning, and also downstream, where they're dealing much more with manufacturing. The manufacturing type group, that one's the one that had more to deal with the orders, as opposed to the upstream, which is dealing more with daily production and trying to predict when wells will run dry, or at what rate they need to adjust so that the well can continue to produce over a long time. Because as it turns out, if you pull too much out, the rock is like a really slow sponge. It'll just stop letting oil out if you suck too hard. But if you slow down, you can get it to produce over a longer cycle, and that can be more valuable for wells.
And when you mentioned orders, is that sort of like people who are like, kind of ordering the oil and gas?
So oil and gas, or manufactured plastics as the end result of it. And so load a train car or a tank car and send that to a client. Where is it in the country, since that's coming by train?
That's super interesting. So like timing must be really important in that kind of job.
Yep. And so this is a current client, so I can't talk about all of that, but that is definitely where they're looking at trying to understand, okay, so where is our stuff? Where's it getting stuck? What do we need to do at the rail yard to make certain that the right cars are available at the right time, that we're not sending a rail car that's about to be on its last legs out, and all of these kind of fleet management planning. that they're trying to make certain they can predict and anticipate for better results.
That's so interesting. That just reminds me, this is kind of random, but I had a friend who worked for a company in Texas years ago that made they made kind of offshore platforms that were on floating kind of ships.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, those guys, and he talked about how like he had to the kind of timing challenges he had with manufacturing were like, I had to make sure that the right kind of screws from Nigeria were getting to Texas on time, all sort of coordinated, and it's just this incredibly complicated kind of dance that you have to do.
Yeah, contiguous processes are a lot of fun to build around, but are also incredibly sensitive to perturbations in the supply chains.
It's super interesting. And so I'm curious, did you study computer science?
Actually, no. I went to university originally to study for electrical engineering and industrial engineering. I ended up exiting the industrial engineering course early so I could go get married, but did fully complete the electrical engineering, trying to focus on robotics. But that was about the time that all the robotics and manufacturing jobs dried up in Houston. So off to oil and gas I went.
Totally makes sense given the location.
Right. And so since then, I've bounced into healthcare, e-commerce, even legal support services as I've served these different clients, helping them to develop software.
That's fascinating. And when did you start writing books?
Oh, gosh. So I officially got the idea to start building these 10-day challenges for sale and publication probably last year, but I'd been building them for about 2 years before that, with just me and a buddy saying, hey, it would be fun if we could run this one of our clients. And then I ran it 2 or 3 more times and found this was consistently useful with groups. I'm like, okay, so maybe there's a bigger thing for this than I thought. And so started looking for these, and we were reading Pragmatic Programmer at the time, which is how we found Leanpub. Thought it was a fantastic service, and so immediately went to roles like, okay, what do I need to do to get IP clearance for this? How long is it going to take? And then off to the races.
And so do you give like free copies of your books to clients when you sort of meet up with them? Is that part of what you do?
When they'll accept it, yes. In fact, the first one of these, the original 10 Days to Become a Better Developer, was the original set of 10-day challenges that I had built for clients, and is one that I have given away several times, including at my most recent client, to any of the developers on staff who wanted to make use of it.
It's super interesting. A lot of the time when people think about like self-publishing, they often think about, like, oh, I want to sort of like, get as much money as I can from the books that I'm selling as possible. Or I want to use it as sort of lead gen, right? So that this is the sort of typical kind of, very, very high output kind of fiction writers will do like, free book. Now you pay for the third one and the fourth one in the trilogy or whatever, if you know what I mean.
Right. I've got you hooked.
Yeah, exactly. But for consultants, actually, like having books is just a really great thing to have, not just kind of like, for sort of self-promotion, but for training and for
exactly.
Getting people on board.
And so now when I'm in the middle of like mentoring a junior dev and they say, hey, what can I do to go better? I'm like, hang on a sec, go generate a link. Here, use this coupon code. And that use case has come up at least 3 times at my current client.
Oh, and so at the end of my interviews, I like to get into the weeds a little bit of Leanpub. But because some people actually who watch these things or listen to our interviews sort of like are really interested in sort of these techniques. So you use our coupon feature to sort of give free versions to people?
Yep. In fact, I'm planning on using that for promoting this book, kind of in honor of my wife and my anniversary coming up here towards the end of December. Because without her, these things would legitimately not be possible.
Well, congratulations on the anniversary.
Thank you.
And just before we end the interview, the book is 10 More Days to Become a Better Developer. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what's in this book and who's it for.
So the difference between the 10 more days to become a developer and 10 days to become a better developer is the more days I chose to focus a lot more on discrete programming practice. So it's no longer just the peripheral practices that will help magnify your impact. They're very specifically, okay, how do I be better at design? How do I start thinking about my code in a different way? How do I do my own code reviews? These are the kind of exercises that are in the more days to become a better developer. And they have a lot more support in the appendix, which is also why it was the second one produced, because it needed a lot more of these materials to do it justice. The original was about these outside practices. Hey, how are you managing your time? How are you planning your days? Are you, on good terms with your QA so they can help you write test cases? These kinds of things were in the original because those are stuff that most developers aren't thinking about to start with. And so they almost always are useful, whether you're senior, junior, or intermediate. Whereas the original set, or the more detailed set, I should say, on the design patterns, on testing practices, those end up being much more useful for junior and intermediate developers and are more of a review for senior developers.
Well, Daniel, my instinct would be to talk to you for another hour if I could, but we're trying to keep these videos short and just sort of fun. So thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to do this. Thank you very much for choosing Leanpub as the platform for your book, and we'll make sure to point people to all of your details in the details.
Much appreciated, Len. It's been fun, and it's been a fantastic platform to develop books with.
Thanks.